I stop to think about it, my life here seems unreal. And at the same time, I've been here for so long that it also feels like home. It is difficult to imagine ever leaving. My relief was due to arrive in 8 months' time, and for the longest time, I was hoping that day never came. I felt the most comfortable for as long as that day remained in the fairly distant future. I am habituated, I guess, tethered to this place. I always was a loner, even back on Pernia. My days on the installation are fairly similar. I get up at the same time every day, have breakfast. I'm one of those people who always need breakfast. And then I start the morning systems check. Life support, oxygen levels, water recyclers, power reserves. The most important stuff first. The stuff I cannot live without. Then I walk my rounds, check every room, every hallway, stop at the observation lounge and look out for a bit. Observe the planet below me, uninhabited and airless. Or I look up at the stars, space, outside. The outside that will kill me in moments, if I ever came into direct contact with it. It doesn't scare me anymore, being alone out there, so far from anyone who could help me, should I need help. On the contrary, I wish I could stay longer. When I'm done gawking at space, I continue on to engineering and run the daily diagnostic on the jump gape's energy capacitors, making sure the field remains stable. But I rarely ever have to adjust it. It was made well, built to last. Then I sit down in the control room, where I spend most of my day. The installation isn't big, but because of the checklists I have to go through, the morning systems check and diagnostic still takes a couple of hours. Engineering takes the longest, of course. It makes up almost 2/3 of this whole place. It's not as tedious as it sounds. Or maybe other people would find it tedious, but I like the routine, the predictability, and the peace and quiet out here. Now and then there's a ship, inbound or outbound, about 2 a month, maybe 3, way below capacity for the gate. Outbound ships are usually picked up by the sensors about a week or so before they arrive. I usually receive a jump request a day or so later, and they bring me new supplies, most of them. Get a discount for doing it, and my employer don't have to send a ship all the way out here just to feed me. Inbound ships I don't really talk to. Instead, I receive a request from the jump gate operator at the other end, together with all the other information I need: size, location, planet of origin. The gate operates on its own mostly. I have to approve each jump, which I always do. And sometimes I have to make minor adjustments. But most of the time I just supervise. I'm here just in case. A human backup for all the automated systems, so they don't have to send someone all the way from Pernia if something goes wrong. Takes about 3 weeks from the home world to the jump gate. I know the jump gate like the back of my own hand. I have to be able to repair and maintain almost all of it, and it took a long time to learn, even though I was an engineer before I applied. And now, after all this time, it feels like second nature. The facility is an old friend by now. I know all its quirks. Machines and computer systems of a certain age always come with quirks. They develop a personality of sorts. I feel safe here, in the belly of the beast. It's not considered a very lucrative job. I mean, it pays well. It has to, since it comes with some pretty big sacrifices. Like being cut off from everyone for 2 standard years. Although some people would see that as a perk, me being among them. They specifically asked for tech-savvy introverts. You don't see the word introvert very often in job openings. I never performed well in group interviews. I prefer one-on-one conversations. But somehow, I nailed it this time and landed the job. Jump gate operator. On the very edge of the solar system. Safely away from everyone else, in case it blows up. I was taught that I might blow it up on purpose one day. I might be ordered to, in case of war. In case we need to shut ourselves off from the rest of humanity out there. Pernia is kind of a backwater planet. Always have been. All the big decisions are made far away, in other systems. And we only have this one gate, connecting us to all the other worlds humanity has colonized. Without it, ships would have to travel sublight speeds to get there, and that wouldn't happen very often, or at all. There is a certain safety in isolation. I can certainly vouch for that. So, if needs must, we can cut ourselves apart from the humanity and go on alone. But I always considered the chances of me having to press that button to be very low, of course. A last resort. There's also an escape pod. Basically just a cryopod with a small rocket engine. It can take me back home should I have to leave before my relief arrives, for one reason or another. It's not really something I've ever worried about. You are usually safer alone anyway, or so I always felt. In the beginning, there was a lot of critique. Some of it was well-founded, I think, that we should not make ourselves dependent on other worlds, that we have always survived on our own, that we would end up like some sort of vassal state to the interplanetary union of worlds. Others just thought it was a waste of money, that ships should be able to jump without a jump gate. And technically, you can jump without a jump gate, but it's difficult, inaccurate, and dangerous. The tiniest miscalculation, and you could end up in the deep void, far from any system, and without enough fuel to make another jump. When you use a jump gate, your ship gets tethered to it and flung directly towards the receiving jump gate, like a slingshot through subspace. So, instead of ships generating their own FTL capabilities, they rely on vast gate-controlled networks that pull them between star systems. Each jump gate is a massive ring-like megastructure orbiting a stable point in a star system, typically near a small planet of some sort, like in my case, barely more than a planetoid. The jump gate needs to be big, of course, to let ships through, and to house the generators that creates a sort of tunnel through space. It has an anchor array, a set of powerful gravitic projectors capable of locking onto a ship and deploying the tether, a reinforced quantum filament energy cable capable of surviving subspace conditions, and a paired gate in another system must be calibrated and aligned to receive the incoming vessel. But I'm getting too technical. This is probably boring to listen to, and you're probably not an engineer anyway. This story is about me, a sort of confession or requiem, depending on how things work out. When Pernia was first colonized, it was by sublight ships. Everyone in cryosleep, of course. Their ships were traveling just below the speed of light, and it still took about 200 years to reach it. We are one of the world's furthest out. Humanity without a jump gate, and the age of generational sublight travel is more or less over. The jump gates also require a lot of energy, and more the longer the distance. So we remain on the edge of humanity. Beyond Pernia lies the unknown. Pernia is a wonderful little world, and very much like Earth. Or so I hear. I've never been to Earth, but the similarities meant that it was easy to settle down here once we reached it. I say we. I mean my ancestors, of course. It's a long time ago, and while they slept away the centuries in the darkness between the stars, the rest of humanity invented jump gate technology. When my ancestors woke up and looked out upon a blue and white marble hovering in the blackness of space, they were already far behind the rest of humanity. Everything they brought with them woefully antiquated. We got our own gate eventually and rejoined the rest of humanity. But we've never been important. We have very little political impact, no army to speak of, and a small population, relative to many other planets at least. I remember when the building of the jump gate was announced. I was a kid, looking up at the sky at night, with a small telescope I had saved up for a long time, and I was trying to find the seventh planet where the jump gate would be built. I didn't imagine myself up there, but my interest in space was lit because of the jump gate. It was hailed as a great accomplishment when it was finally completed. Our very own jump gate, connecting us to the rest of civilized space. Looking back on it now, I'm not so sure it was such a good thing. Maybe the skeptics were right. The gate brought new technologies and wares, of course, but it also brought new trade treaties that has not always been to our advantage. We must let other worlds mine and harvest and regulate our own in-planet trade. I thought trade agreements would be about just that. Trade between us and them. But over the years, it has expanded to encompass almost all facets of life. How we build our houses, the educational system, how we are allowed to farm, and our own politicians let them. They agree to too much. They want a piece of the cake for themselves, no doubt. Power wants more power. And a political career that starts on little Pernia might very well end in an influential position on Earth itself. In that sense, our leaders are no better than any other part of humanity trying to exploit Pernia. I came out here to get away from all of that. Other people and their petty games. Now I get to see their ships come and go. Cargo ships mostly, hauling all sorts of things. But now and then, a political delegation or a warship. Because other worlds use our system to conduct military exercises now and then. So in a way, I'm closer to it than before. But I only communicate with the navigator, of course, and the operators on the other jump gates. None of us seem to be very talkative. I guess this kind of job attracts a specific type of person. I'm so accustomed to being alone out here that I really don't know how I would handle being thrown back into society. I don't like changes. I deal with them if I have to, but I don't like it. It all started almost a month ago. One day, all the media channels disappeared. At first I thought it was a problem with the Umbrian relay. Everything I receive from Pernia is directed towards the jump gate via the mining colony there. I can usually watch the news, series, whatever I want with just a few hours delay. It has malfunctioned a few times before, but this time it lasted far longer. After a day, I checked the receivers on my end. No problem there. So it seemed to me that the best thing to do was to wait and see. I don't watch much media anyway. So I did some maintenance work instead. I went EVA to replace some worn-out plasma coils. As I was hanging out there in space, tethered to the installation by a line made of synthetic fiber, I remember thinking that I should order some more of those plasma coils. But I couldn't, of course. Not as long as I had no signal. It felt a bit surreal. Going EVA is always such a powerful experience. Hanging there, a little dot in the vastness of space. It always reminds me of how small I am, how unforgiving space is, and how powerful. It always seems like a paradox that such an experience, the closest thing I ever get to being spiritual, is at the same time steeped in mundane practicalities. I went out there to do maintenance, and the whole process was framed by a checklist and the routine of putting on my suit. When I came back in, the installation felt dead, and I craved some sort of human contact, however faint, a rare feeling for me. These walls, these rooms, are my whole world, and everything here is human-made, yet I am the only human. Sometimes I wonder if seen anything like that in the latest forecasts. But you never know. And what else could it be? What could be so severe that all communications were destroyed or deliberately jammed? War, I suppose. Revolution. No, that's ridiculous. Those things have a long build-up, and although Pernia was more politically divided than it had been in previous decades, something like that was highly unlikely. So it probably were solar storms after all, I told myself. They can be difficult to predict. A few days later, I was unable to establish contact even with Umbria. I was now utterly alone, and all I could do was wait. After days of nagging uncertainty, I decided to contact a few of the other jump gates to see if they had any information at all. I chose the ones I had had the most amiable conversations with in the past, because jump gate operators can be gruff and unfriendly, like me, I suppose. The ones I contacted answered promptly enough. None of them knew about anything particular going on in the Pernian system, and the way they answered me gave me the impression that they thought I was not quite in my right mind. I felt worse after speaking to them. There was no help or comfort to be had then, anywhere. And perhaps they were right. Perhaps I was losing it. Time passed, one day after another. I slept, I ate, I walked my rounds, read my detective novels. Again, I worked out, and I spent whole evenings on the observation deck, watching a few series I had downloaded a long time ago. And I spent a fair amount of time looking down on the little rocky world below me, slowly spinning and devoid of life. All the while, I had this nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach. I hated not knowing what was going on. This was a stark reminder that I hadn't been as cut off from society as I had imagined myself to be. That I did indeed care. I didn't want to be alone anymore. Being alone was all well and good when you knew that there were a perfectly functioning society out there. You had news to watch, shows to catch up on. Food was delivered now and then. You could sit in your own safe bubble where no one could reach you and wrinkle your nose at everyone else. And I had genuinely wanted everyone to leave me alone. But now, when I was truly alone and cut off from everything and everyone, I longed for human contact. I felt something else as well. used to hike when I lived planetside. Brought a tent and a fishing rod and stayed out for days. Whenever I had time off work, I'd walk all day, fish for my dinner, and relax by a small fire at night. There's something primordial about staring into a fire, something people have done for thousands of years. I always thought I would hike through the northern mountains again when my posting came to an end. Now, I was wondering if that would ever happen. What if this was something truly big? What if something terrible was happening back home? I convinced myself that I was exaggerating, and that I would feel like a fool in the morning when everything was back up and running. But then another day passed, and communications were still out, and that seed of doubt would emerge again and grow a little bit bigger. What could cause this? Radio silence for so long. This had never happened before. I tried contacting Umbria again, but there was no answer this time either. In the end, when I was exhausted from ruminating, I would just take a sleeping pill and go to bed. There was nothing I could do about it anyway. Days passed, then a week, 2 weeks, and then, on the 17th day, I woke up to an incoming call. It was a jump request, perfectly normal, like nothing was amiss. It was a military cruiser. It requested passage to Earth. It was still 6 days out, so I did what I usually do. I downloaded the specifics, size, weight, and so on, and contacted one of the jump gates in Earth's system. 20 minutes later, the jump was scheduled. We set it up for an hour or so after the cruiser would arrive. I knew better than to ask why we were sending military forces to Earth, but I did ask if they were bringing any supplies for me, which they did not. Nevertheless, it was reassuring to know that a ship was on the way. It felt so normal, but that feeling did not last for long. The next morning, there were 3 other jump requests waiting for me, all for Earth, and the next day, 4 more, heading for the Endwa system. Military cruisers all, leaving the system at the same time. I could not bring myself to ask any of them what was going on. Part of me was afraid of being seen as crazy again, or as too inquisitive, which felt dangerous for some reason. They probably had someone on board capable of doing my job, should I prove to be difficult. And part of me was afraid that my worst fears were actually true, and that something was seriously wrong. By now, 2 possible scenarios had arisen in my mind. like the people on Umbria had said. That scenario was bad enough, but the other possibility was worse. What if there really was some sort of planet-wide catastrophe back home, and the military cruisers were akin to rats leaving a sinking ship? This was the scenario I could not, for the life of me, get out of my head. All the big shots are leaving, I thought, and they're leaving the rest of us behind. The jump gate operator at F4A told me that their gate was going through some extensive upgrade, and therefore was working at reduced capacity. The other gate they had was shut down for the same reason, with a planned reopening in about a month. The gate that was partially operational could receive no more than one ship a day. Usually that would not be a problem. Space travel is rare enough, even with the jump gate system. Next after Earth, F4A was one of the most powerful human settlements. It was humanity's first successful extrasolar colony, and although it was not among the biggest or most densely populated, it was important politically and financially. A lot of money flowed in and out of F4A. They've always been more than a bit exclusive, and the planet was sometimes called Billionaire's World. If you were going into some sort of political exile, this is where you would want to go. I don't know what deal they had struck, but apparently not everyone was welcomed on Earth. F4A, on the other hand, welcomed everyone who had enough money. When I contacted the navigator I'd talked to before and told him about F4A's limited capacity, he reacted with some annoyance. After what appeared as a short discussion, they decided that one extra ship would go to Earth and only 3 to F4A. I arranged for one more transit to Earth, which was approved, but with some delay. And I tried not to think about how time-sensitive this whole thing seemed to be. And once again, all I could do was wait. I tinkered with the communication relays, checking again and again if there was something wrong on my end. I found nothing. I still walked my usual rounds every day, but my work was sloppy. My mind was elsewhere. As the first ship arrived, I made sure the gate was fully powered. It worked, as it always did. Made to last. Reliable. When a ship approaches the jump gate, I get a pretty good view of it. It has to enter the ring itself for the tethering process to start. Once the ship is tethered, the subspace tunnel is created and connected to the gate at the other end. The whole process takes about half an hour. When everything is ready, the ship is sent through in a matter of minutes. Afterwards, the gate needs a couple of hours to charge up again, and then it's ready for another jump. I have accommodated these military cruisers a few times before. Now and then, they have been sent to other systems, usually for a military exercise of some kind. And as far as I could see through the viewports that overlook the ring itself, the first one looked no different from usual. No wear and tear, no damage. The ship was close enough that I could see people through their viewports. There seemed to be a lot of people on board. And then, just for a second or two, I saw the president. He was standing at one of the foremost viewports and seemed to be watching the ring. Then he turned his head, and our eyes locked. He flinched, and then he hastily moved away. My heart was pounding in my ears, and I was wondering if he had flinched because he suddenly locked eyes with the one person who had the power to thwart his escape. After a bit of hesitation, I contacted the navigator again. Up until the moment he answered, I was not at all sure what I would say or ask, but I needed something, contact, or information of some kind. When he answered my call, he seemed less than friendly, like he expected bad news and was ready to blame me for them. So all I did ask was if anything in particular was required of me after all the ships had gone through the gate. He answered brusquely, telling me that the last ship would give me my orders. I thanked him and ended the call. I already suspected what those orders were, and my fear of being replaced if I questioned anything, if I proved bothersome in any way, did not abate. So I sent them through, one ship after another. What else could I do? It was my job after all. But I did not look out through the viewport again. I was an invisible, obedient servant. I would give them no reason to question my loyalty. The ships going to Endwar took longer, of course. One a day. I was informed that the ship that had been redirected to Earth were to be the last one to leave, even though it could have left straight away. It seemed to have taken up a defensive position a bit further out from the jump gate, and directly in its path, but further out still, was something else. Something that sent shivers down my spine. Another ship. It had to be. I studied the sensor data without getting much out of it. It was like nothing I had encountered before. I did not contact any of the lost ship would give me new orders. But they simply went through the gate. I sat back in my chair and felt relieved. I had genuinely expected them to order me to push that button to blow up the gate so the other ship could not get through. The other ship, I had forgotten about them for a second. At the speed it was going, it was still a day out from the gate. One more day. That was all the time I had to decide. Or was it? A familiar feeling of nagging doubt arose again. What if? No, this was probably all in my head. The military cruisers might all be called into Earth and Endwar for some big joint forces exercise. And the other ship could be a regular hauler who had failed to contact me even though they were only a day out, and did not read like any other ship I'd ever encountered. I decided that it was best to check all possibilities, so I went through every system, every software installed, and that's the only reason I found it. A small download, a command I was sure hadn't been there before. I opened it. By the timestamp, it was downloaded just before the last ship entered the gate. The download did two things. It triggered the jump gate self-destruct mechanism, and it disabled the alarms that would normally warn me of it. I stared at it in disbelief. There were 3 minutes left on the countdown. There was nothing preventing me from turning it off, so I did. It was just supposed to stay hidden, that's all, and go off before I noticed it. When the 3 minutes were up and nothing happened, I sat and stared at the wall for a good while. I wasn't paranoid. I had been right. That nagging doubt in my stomach saved my life. They did want the gate to blow up, but they did not trust me to follow that order, and apparently they did not value my life at all. I was expendable. I readied the escape pod, made sure it worked the way it was supposed to, and the semblance of a plan developed in my mind. I was sick of waiting, but I had to wait for just one more day. It all depended on that last ship. What was it? Before radio silence, my days seemed to fly by in a sort of blur. One day, more or less undistinguishable from the rest. Now, time had slowed to a crawl. Every Every second dragged out. Every minute felt like an hour. It was difficult to comprehend that this might be my last day here. No, it definitely was. No matter what happened tomorrow, I would not remain on duty here. I would leave, or I would die. They had tried to kill me after all. As far as they knew, I was dead already, and no more supplies would come anyway. I had no reason to stay. Late in the evening, I returned to the control room. I had 5 missed calls from the Earth jump gate. No surprises there. They were probably trying to check if the gate had been blown up like planned. There was no point in going to bed. I was far too tense. I could sleep in my pod for 3 weeks on the way back to Bernia, if I lived. So I slumbered through the night in my chair in the control room, and early next morning I could see the ship with my own eyes. It was about the same size as one of the cruisers, but more organic looking, with a sleek surface that seemed to ripple and change. No windows, as far as I could see, and a cloud-like substance surrounding parts of it that flowed and moved like some deep-sea creature swimming through space. It had lights along its side, yellow lights that sometimes flickered. I received something. The computers could not make heads or tails of it. It just came through as a bunch of noise. But at least they weren't attacking. They were trying to communicate. Alien life. Intelligent alien life, clearly. Humans never found it. We found nothing more than microbial life when we explored. So we terraformed suitable planets and spread out from Earth in all directions. But still, we had only colonized a tiny corner of the galaxy. And now, alien life had found us. As the ship approached, I could discern more details. It looked somewhat old and weathered. I saw some gashes that seemed like old impact damage that had been somewhat imperfectly repaired. If I had to guess, I would say that this ship had been traveling at sublight speeds for a very long time. For what purpose I could not say. I also saw what must be weapon arrays, and plenty of them. The ship sent me another, equally incomprehensible message. I could only assume that they wanted to use the jump gate. Whoever or whatever was on board must have observed the gate in action over the last few days, and it seemed that I was was right, for slowly, over the next hour or so, the ship positioned itself inside the gate in exactly the same position as it must have seen the military cruisers take. And in the time it took to get into that position, I made up my mind. I did not know what had happened to Pernia, but it was highly unlikely that one ship could destroy the entire biome of a planet. Nature must still be there. Trees, animals, breathable air, life. Civilization and technology might have been attacked, and some of it completely destroyed, but an entire planet? That was hard to imagine. So, I could just go home. I could hike again, live off the land. I didn't need much, and as an engineer, my skills would be useful. No one need to know that I had ever been a jump gate operator. I thought of the big shots who had abandoned us. I thought of all the political deals that had been made over Pernia's natural resources. How we slowly lost our sovereignty because of the greed of our own politicians. Piece by piece, one signature at a time, our planet had been plucked apart and sold to the highest bidder. And when push came to shove, everyone rich enough or powerful enough had fled and left regular people behind. When the alien ship was in position, it was just over a day since the last ship had been sent through to the Endwarian jump gate, and I had neglected to inform the operator that there would only be 3 ships coming in from Pernia, not 4, like previously stated. If no one else had told them, this might just work. I called the Endwarian operator. He sounded drowsy and bored. I told him the last ship was ready to jump. He confirmed, and I activated the gate. No such ship had ever been sent through before. I could measure its size, but I had to estimate its weight. I punched in the details, and the gate hummed into action, like always. And the alien ship was successfully tethered to it. The subspace corridor was created, and a few minutes later, the ship was flung through, and then it was gone. The Pernian system was safe. My home, all that I had ever known, and the rest of humanity. They will have to fend for themselves. We have sacrificed enough for them already. I activated the self-destruct system again and set the countdown to 48 hours. My little escape pod should be well out of range by then. What little time I have left before I must leave, I have spent recording this message. I will send it to Umbria and to Softspoken. Perhaps no one will ever receive it, or perhaps communications have simply been intentionally jammed for a while to allow the big shots to escape without any questions. When the gate explodes, we will be free of them, politicians and alien ships alike. None of them can reach us anymore. Not for hundreds of years. I doubt another jump gate will be built here. I do not know if I am a hero or a villain. Perhaps I saved my home